It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Vintage for sure, from the flapping 20s to the edgy 80s. Each generation has something that one wants to preserve and also keep for the next generation. Well, women have been modernizing vintage and making sure that we're putting beauty and style out there from across the ages. And here to talk about it, Barbara Talbot, contemporary advice. Think vintage clothing for fashion lovers. I'm a fashion lover. Barbara, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Where did your love for vintage come from?
Well, I think I've always liked to play dress-up, scratching in my mom's cupboard and my grand's cupboard. But it really started when I was a student studying fashion design. Yeah, you had to thrift a lot being a student. And then after my studies, I went to travel to Australia, where I came across a lot of cute boutiques. I remember thinking, I need to bring this back to Cape Town. We didn't have anything like this here.
Now, I spoke about the flapping 20s and the edgy 80s. What's your favorite clothing or fashion era?
Well, like all women, I change my mind a lot, but at the moment I'm obsessed with beaded pieces from the 1920s.
Right.
Yeah, and I like the boldness of the 80s, like the accessories and so on.
I joke about it, but what's the difference between vintage and second-hand?
Well, vintage is used to describe the different eras. So it's anything from the 1920s to the 1980s, whereas second-hand is previously owned items.
It's my clothes that I'm throwing out.
Yes,
oh, so that's not vintage. Oh. It's just old.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we want to bring our models out. It's possible for us to upcycle, apparently. Can one upcycle vintage?
Yes, I'm a big fan. You can upcycle new clothes and old clothes.
Okay, wait, I have to go one step back. What does upcycle mean?
Well, it means you're just altering it slightly, you know. Lots of times you love the fabric or the trim on something, but the fit's just slightly off, where by just altering like the waistband or shortening hems or replacing buttons, you can bring new living to something, you know.
So how did you upcycle this?
Just taking it in the waistband and putting in new press studs with the crossover, and so it goes a bit down, and taking up the hem and so on.
Okay, well, we have a few other schmuddles in our studio talking vintage. How easy is it to combine vintage with your modern wardrobe?
Well, I find it very easy, and I find it essential as well. I think the way you should wear vintage is maybe just one or two old pieces and then mixing it more with a modern you know.
So not all vintage?
Yeah, exactly. You know, just balance it out.
So which one is modern and which is vintage?
The lace tops are what you would find in the shops today, and then the pants is vintage, obviously, and the shades are just retro, so they're just vintage inspired as well, and then vintage shoes.
It just shows you. I couldn't even tell which one is new and which one is vintage.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it looks incredible. I even like the colors. The sandy pants are incredible. Okay, then what do you think are our vintage gems? What is the must-haves? I go into your store in, where's a Church Street, and I find stuff. What do I grab and what do I leave on the rail?
Well, I think a good thing to start with is a classic blouse, you know, something with some detail that you can just pair with jeans or anything, and then a 50s skirt or dress. And like I said, my favorite, a showstopper beaded piece that you can wear on a special night out.
Most of the time when I go into the vintage shops, the shoes don't fit. So I'm always like, oh man, I really wanted that pair. Any other advice that you can give us when we start shopping for our favorite pieces?
If you see it and you like it, buy it.
Really? Even if it doesn't fit?
Yeah, you can always sell it to a friend because it's just one of it, you know what I mean?
Right. Oh no! So I should have just bought it, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, incredible stuff. We're talking 1920s and 80s, anything from the 1920s, I'm told, until the 80s is vintage. I think that I was born between those, so all my clothes that I had back then, I should have just kept it.
Yeah,
Listen, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
It's a pleasure.
This is your Feel Good Breakfast Show. Vintage, delight and fashion. That's what we're talking on our show. Katlego, are you into vintage, yeah?